Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. I'm Julian McCrann, the Roy Morgan Poll Manager, stepping in for Roy Morgan CEO Michele Levine, who is unavailable. The Albanese government, on 51%, has a narrow lead over the coalition on 49% on two-party preferred terms, the latest Roy Morgan survey shows. If a federal election were held now, the result would be a hung parliament, with the ALP likely to form a minority government with the support of minor parties and independents. This week, inflation expectations jumped 0.4% to 5.2%, the highest weekly jump so far this year. This increase came in the week the official monthly ABS inflation showed a higher than expected result at 4% for May 2024, up from 3.6% in April. The ANZ Roy Morgan Inflation Expectations Indicator now shows that Australians expect annual inflation to be 5.2% over the next 2 years, the highest figure for 2 months. Despite the jump, inflation expectations have been remarkably stable over the last 7 months and have stayed within a narrow band of 4.8 to 5.3% for 30 weeks since early December. Primary voting support for the major parties was little changed, with the coalition down 0.5% to 36.5% and the ALP unchanged on 31.5%. The virtually unchanged result came after the unexpected release of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, as well as higher than expected ABS monthly inflation at 4%, leading to calls from many economists for the Reserve Bank to raise interest rates. This week, millions of Australians will start receiving income tax cuts, which the Albanese government hopes will strengthen their support as many Australians deal with a high cost of living. Support for the Greens was unchanged at 13%, support for One Nation dropped 1.5% to 4.5%, support for other parties increased 1.5% to 5.5%, and support for independents increased 0.5% to 9%. Roy Morgan government confidence increased 1 point to 78.5, still over 20 points below the neutral level of 100. And a majority of 54% of Australians say the country is going in the wrong direction. Only 32.5% say the country is heading in the right direction. ANZ Roy Morgan consumer confidence increased 0.9 points to 81.3, still well below the neutral level of 100. Looking longer term, consumer confidence has now spent a record 74 weeks below the level of 85, almost 18 months. Both key indicators in New Zealand, government confidence and consumer confidence, slid further below the neutral level of 100 in June. Roy Morgan government confidence dropped 13 points to 83 in June, with a slim majority of 52.5% of New Zealanders saying the country is heading in the wrong direction. ANZ Roy Morgan New Zealand consumer confidence, the measure of consumers' economic sentiment, was down 1.7 points to 83.2. The Roy Morgan poll shows a marginal improvement for Prime Minister Christopher Luxon's National-led government in June, but still the second lowest result since the election. Support for National increased 1.5% to 35% in June, while support for the main opposition Labor dropped 2.5% to 27.5%, a gap of 7.5 percentage points between the two major parties. In fact, a greater share of electors, 37.5%, support one of the minor parties including the Greens, ACT, New Zealand First and the Maori Party. On an overall basis, just 49.5% of New Zealanders now support Christopher Luxon's National-led government, the second lowest result since last year's election. Support for National was 35%, ACT was 9% and New Zealand First was 5.5%. Support for the parliamentary opposition was at 45.5% in June, down slightly from May. Support for Labor was 27.5%, the Greens 14.5%, and the Maori Party 3.5%. And that's a wrap. Thanks for your interest this week in Roy Morgan's latest results. And next week, Michele will be back on board to bring you the most up-to-date readings on consumer confidence, inflation expectations, unemployment and voting intentions in Australia. Subscribe free to our Roy Morgan YouTube channel for all the latest political, economic and market research data and insights. Thank you.